I've always considered my relationship with the Danganronpa franchise to be very on again and off again, especially after the Great Komaeda killing incidents of 2015 lasting all the way until the modern day. With this, it became increasingly difficult to out myself as a fan. That on top of the fact that I had only really played the first game until very recently. So after replaying that first entry again almost 7 years after its release on the Vita, I came to the hard-hitting conclusion that it was okay. It was fine. Don't really have much to write home about. The ending was great, I really like that, but I mean, it's kind of like just a B movie of a video game. Like, I enjoy it, the schlock is fun, but it's not really sticking with me outside of the fun kills. Not too long after, I transitioned into the sequel and kind of spun my wheels on it. Nothing in particular stood out to me as a non-starter or anything, but for some reason I just couldn't sit down and finish it. So after some time passed and I felt ready enough, I jumped in and was very pleased with the results. I am currently in the midst of my playthrough of B3, so I'm unable to tell you which I prefer overall, but what I can tell you is that Danganronpa 2 Goodbye Despair is one of the finest sequels I have ever played. Spoiler warning going forward, I normally leave this for when it's relevant, but frankly I believe games like Danganronpa are best experienced completely blind, so anything and everything in this video is considered a spoiler. This video is also written on the assumption that you, the audience member, has some knowledge of the events of Danganronpa 2, and when I get down to plot summary, I'm going to move fast, so please refresh your memory now and proceed after you feel like you're ready. With that out of the way, let's take a look at what this game did so right to well and truly elevate its franchise to become something special and carve out its own little bloody piece of my heart. This is Danganronpa 2 Goodbye Despair.
I'll be cheering for you too.
Danganronpa 2 originally released on the PSP in 2012, with a Vita port soon following the next year, and it finally made its way to the West in 2014. Like I mentioned in the intro, I was an unfortunate child who owned a Vita for a long time before I got my 3DS, and needless to say, finding games to play on the Vita when you're like 12 is really fucking hard.
Damn it, I almost peed myself.
But I distinctly remember seeing this one abridged series about Danganronpa, and that got me really interested in the series from the outset. For those unaware, which, why are you still here? I make spoiler warnings for a reason, and yet you ignore me and disrespect me in my own house. Danganronpa has one hell of an elevator pitch. The general gist of a Danganronpa title is that 16 students, all specializing in one hyper-specific talent dubbed Ultimates, are trapped in a location and harassed by a sentient stuffed bear named Monokuma, and then they are forced into a killing game in which they are incentivized to murder one of their classmates and make the crime as unsolvable as possible. This is due to the class trial that accompanies every homicide, where the class is given time to examine the crime scene and come together to hold a kangaroo court where they pore over the evidence present and determine by a unanimous vote who was the blackened, quote-unquote. If the class votes correctly, the blackened is executed in an incredibly over-the-top and ironic death sequence. If the class votes wrong, however, they are all executed and the blackened is allowed to graduate, thus meaning they have won the game. All Danganronpa games basically follow this skeleton plot structure, but it's the minutiae of the games that really helps them stand out from each other. I enjoyed Danganronpa when I was way too fucking young to be playing it, and by the time V3 came out, I considered myself a casual fan. It wasn't until about August of 2020 that I decided to commit to finishing the series after hearing that I would adore V3. So I expect to suffer through 2 okay games to get to pure Kino. Safe to say that Danganronpa 2 was a bit of a shock to the system, and I was taken aback by just how good it was. Danganronpa 2 is such a fucking improvement over everything 1 does, while still remaining a faithful sequel that shows respect for the player's intelligence and even plays with the expectations someone would have about the sequel to a Danganronpa game. Beyond the usual dang old grandpa plot, the setup to 2 is a pretty captivating one. It begins with the protagonist named Hajime Hinata waking up on a beach with a wicked case of author's best friend amnesia. From here, he is introduced to a colorful cast of characters that we have for the day, and finally the cartoon mascot of the hour, Usami. Now, if you played the first game, which again, I fucking hope you did, why would you jump in at 2? Hey, how about you shut the fuck up and let me get to it, huh, okay? Sorry. Okay, compose yourself. Now, if you played the first game, you definitely smell something going on here. Kidnapped high schoolers with larger-than-life personalities and one defining talent? Check. Weird cartoon mascot with an obnoxious voice? Double check. Some incoherent bullshit about hope? Oh yeah, it's all come together now. The first thing that grabbed me about Danganronpa 2 is its setting. Now, I'm not sure if I mentioned it in my Flower, Sun, and Rain video, but I am a huge sucker for games set in a tropical locale. That's why I created this Tropical Games Rhombus to properly demonstrate what I consider to be the peak of the aesthetic. As you can see, we got Flower, Sun, and Rain, Paradise Killer, Mario Sunshine, and we have Danganronpa 2. And you know, would you believe me if I said the one that holds the most contempt for the player is the Mario game? But of the 4, I'd consider Danganronpa to be my favorite location. Something about Jabberwock Island is off-putting enough to keep me on edge during my time playing, but it's also so cozy, and the different islands that unlock as the game progresses are all incredibly memorable and fun to explore. One thing I do prefer in the first title to its sequel is the method of exploration, however. While the weird paper doll aesthetic of 2's side-scrolling is fun to look at and has its own unique charm, I feel like the connection to my environment was lost when you strip away that first-person exploration, except for the bits at the hotel, really. This is something I'm really glad they brought back in V3 and only really improved on. Another major improvement brought about by 2 is in the cast department. See, Danganronpa is one of those franchises that lives and dies on the entertainment provided by its cast members. Moment-to-moment character interactions is the strength of these games, and 2 delivers on that strong suit in spades. What's that, gamers? You're right, it's that time to play America's favorite game, say it with me y'all, Danganronpa Cast List Lightning Round! Alright, the aim of the game is to describe our cast members in the most accurate way possible in the shortest amount of time. Okay kids, ready, set, go! Hajime Hinata, Catholic school survivor and future Giga Chad. Akane Owari, Cult Rival Schools character. Chiaki Nanami, that gamer girlfriend your mom wishes you had. Gundam Tanaka, weird kid from 3rd period who give you his tasty cake if you beat him in Yu-Gi-Oh! Fuyuhiko Kuzuryu, your 5'2" friend, you know the one. Teruteru Hanamura, Toe Sucker General. Mahiru Koizumi. Nekomaru Nidai, Frankie. Mekamaru, post-time skip Frankie. Minimaru, post-time skip Frankie. Hiyoko Saionji, your other 5'2" friend, you know the one. Mikansumiki, gas, I like that. Gate, I keep that. Boss, I girl that. Sonia, never mind. That girl who always talked to you during English class, but you knew was out of your league and you're doing just fine. Gotta be down because I won it all. It started out with a kiss. How could it end up like this? It was only a kiss. It was only a kiss. Kazuichi Soda, B-Pick Scavenger, Struggler.png. Peko Pekayama, forgive me, master. I must go all out justice once. Ibuki Miyoda, hi everyone, I'm new, holds up my spork. My name is Ibuki, but you can call me Tepenguin of Doom. Well, as you can see, I'm very random. Pointing! Fat Byakuya, not my Byakuya. Get this trending, it's my boycott call to action. And finally, Nagito Komaeda. Yeah. While the first title had a few standouts like Byakuya in its cast list, there are quite a few stinkers in the group. They range from boring and bland like Leon, Sayaka, and Naegi for like 80% of the game, to obnoxious like Hifumi.
May the hellfires of Beelzebub rend thy flesh asunder, Hifumi Danganronpa.
The other members of the cast are fine enough, but few are elevated beyond, they're okay I guess. This is something 2 remedies by playing my favorite character trait card of all time. These people are fucking morons.
But you know and I know that you're only half the man that I am. And I have half the brain that you do. But we just a weak.
Like in 2, I can name only 2 characters I genuinely don't like. One of them is Teruteru, who I'm convinced is the most loathed Danganronpa character, and he dies within an hour or 2, and the other is Mahiru, whose biggest crime is that she's just kind of boring. But the rest of the cast is, whoo boy, okay. This is that good shit. See, like I said, they're, for the most part, fucking morons.
Your head! It looks like it's split in half!
Well, it'll heal as long as I rub some spit in it, right?
What?
I think between the 16 of them, they got 2 brain cells that eventually got taken away because they failed to make payments for it. In the first game, mostly everyone had some level of normalcy to them, and you had about like 2 or 3 freaks being Toko, Celeste, and Hiro, who isn't weird but just has cardboard brain. Now, take that principle of being weird and a bit stupid and just spread that out and escalate it exponentially. There is no normal in Danganronpa 2. Everyone is a fucking psycho for no reason, and I love it. See, when I come to these kinds of games, I'm not here to find characters I love and relate to. I may end up finding them as I will get into, but for the most part, I'm here to find the most bitchy and awful character to latch onto. I am a huge fan of Jersey Shore, so this is like my jam. And within the confines of Danganronpa 2, I found her. Saionji may be one of the most genuinely entertaining characters I've had the pleasure of watching play out in a while. Where I currently am in V3, Mio and Kokichi are filling in that void quite nicely, and I hope to have them eclipse Saionji by the time I'm done. Honestly, I could do a little mini write-up on every character in Danganronpa 2, and I'd feel satisfied with that. I mean, I kind of already did. But I really want to explore the things that holds these characters together, which shockingly enough is the theme, which is another thing that 2 greatly improves over 1. Now, I know it's odd to discuss theme when invoking Danganronpa because honestly, these games appear to be exploitative pulp fiction rather than serious art. Something to stimulate your brain while not making you think, much like a police procedural or a classic whodunit. But they do have their own themes that carry the narrative and provide a good connective tissue between the cases. In 1, the theme is incredibly simple, almost insultingly so. Basically, the thesis stands that despair is contagious much like a virus, negative thoughts perpetuate negativity in an endless spiral, but much like despair, hope is equally contagious, and having a positive outlook can improve your life and the lives of those around you. When I beat Danganronpa 1 and had a working brain since I was no longer 13, it was a very trying time in my life. It was right around when I was making my Flower, Sun, and Rain video, a video I'm deeply proud of but is hard to go back to. The reason being, during the production and the recording of that video, I was suffering from COVID. It was a very lonely and isolating time, and I was filled with uncertainty and, frankly, despair. I found it quite uplifting to play a game that told me that it was okay to face uncertainty with positivity and continue moving forward. Danganronpa 2, on the other hand, is an entirely different beast. To get to the nitty-gritty of the matter, I have to do a small recap of the first title and work my way through the story of 2. Danganronpa 1 ends with the final class members being Naegi, Kyoko, Toko, Byakuya, Hina, and Hiro, as Naegi is framed for the murder of the secret student Mukuro Ikusawa. After this, the school around them begins to fall apart into a state of hostility and disarray as they uncover who the mastermind is. It is revealed that the one behind it all was none other than, pause for effect, Junko Enoshima, you know, the girl who got gigafucked in the 3rd hour. To explain Junko is a tough one because she is far and away my favorite character in the franchise at time of writing, so to best describe her, I'll refer back to the chart and say... I mean, what can I say? I think she's funny, because she's completely off her fucking nut. Long story short, by using the power of hope, Naegi defeats Junko, she hyper-kills herself, and our cast walks into the great unknown with the knowledge that their world had suffered an apocalyptic event known as the Tragedy. This is where Danganronpa 2 picks up on the aforementioned desert island with amnesia Mick doesn't know his talent, Hajime Hinata. The game proceeds as expected, but we learn more and more about the fact that the cast has completely lost their memories of their time at Hope's Peak with each other. This was a twist presented to us in the first game, and honestly, it's a really funny joke to call back to just because of how much of a contrived coincidence mass amnesia is for the plot. Except, Danganronpa 2 ends up justifying it somehow, but like I said, we'll get there eventually. For now, we proceed as per usual. First case was Teruteru killing Fat Byakuya for reasons, I guess? I don't know, this case is the introduction to the Komaeda Variety Hour, also known as the rest of the fucking game. See, Danganronpa 2 loves taking your expectations and shattering them over its knee. The way Komaeda is portrayed in the first act of the game, he's kind of your best friend guide character, and he has the ultimate lucky student tag, which is meant to invoke Naegi from the first game. But woe unto the unsuspecting visual novel gamer, for Komaeda is not what he seems. And honestly, he doesn't even try to really hide that. Instead of a trustworthy companion, Komaeda Komaeda acts as your one dickhead friend in Mario Party who keeps paying off Boo to steal your stars, and every fucking space he lands on has a hidden block with a star in it. Because, spoiler alert, that lucky student title is not a pity prize like it was for Naegi. Komaeda isn't a lucky guy. He's a guy whose talent is luck. And that luck manifests not as winning the lottery or finding a penny on the street. That luck is bending the universe to his every whim, because Komaeda is fucking hilarious. This brings us to case 2, where it appears that everyone's favorite Full House cast member, Mahiru, was killed in the bathroom, and it was none other than Peko. Which sucks because I actually liked Peko, but whoa, watch out, she's a serial killer too, just like Toko! Oh wait. She was using that as a diversion because she works for Fuyuhiko, and he wanted Mahiru killed because she killed his sister, or at least has something to do with it. Again, this game loves to just fuck with you if you remember the plot beats of 1. It's odd because the cast of this game kind of feels like low-rent versions of the previous game's crew. Also, in this trial, it marks the rise of Chiaki as a major player, or should I say gamer, slaps knee and laughs at own joke. I'm so funny. On a more somber note, we get our first hint of genuine tragedy in this chapter as Fuyuhiko has to cope with the fact that he orchestrated this crime and, in the process, lost a close friend in Peko. It's a sobering revelation and serves for Fuyuhiko's character arc, which makes him a much better character down the road. He actively begins to shoulder the blame and the guilt of this tragedy and even attempts to disembowel himself as some form of penance. But, you know, in the end it all works out. I think it does.
Why am I still...
A consistent factor I find between Danganronpa 1 and 2 is that Case 3 seems to be the overtly complex hump chapter. This issue is also found in the Ace Attorney games, and I don't know what it is, but something about Case 3 Curse just makes it so that you get there and you're like, oh fuck, this shit again, okay. Well, let's go through it. I find the example in 1 more insufferable due to the fact that I fucking hate you. Okay, I'm over it. But in Danganronpa 2, I find Case 3 fun, if not for the fact that the answer is so blatantly obvious. I suck at solving mysteries and puzzles. I'm the guy who plays Baba as you with a walkthrough, so when I'm guessing the ending, you have to be signposting that motherfucker like a highway. Overall, it's still an enjoyable chapter, but it's not out of the ordinary. Personally, there is no real nadir in this game. I think some cases are better than others, but there is none that I squarely look at and go, that one right there, officer. When the worst I could say about a trial is that it was predictable but fun, I consider that high praise. I find this opinion odd because in most circles I've seen this is often ranked among one of the worst in the franchise, and I feel like that's a little bit harsh. From a tertiary glance, most seem to complain that it's bad because it kills off Saionji and Ibuki, which in a sense I get, but also I feel like it's a necessary evil that does a good job at allowing you to connect better with the game on an investment level. An issue I take umbrage with in the first game is the main group up until about Case 5 feels like nothing more than lambs to the slaughter wearing funny hats. Sure, some of them have really funny and entertaining hats, but a lot of them feel disposable. After Case 2 and Goodbye Despair, however, everyone feels essential in one way or another, and each death is a true gut punch that can genuinely be upsetting. So to those who decry Case 3 for killing off their faves, if you stay mad, I mean, you're just proving that the game's doing something right. This brings me to Case 4, which I feel marks a watershed moment in Danganronpa 2. This is where the game begins its journey from a fun murder mystery with some hint of edge to an actual masterpiece. The way everything is presented in the funhouse, from the pre-chapter loss of Nekomaru to the setup, to the motive, to the killer themselves, everything just works and it had me hooked. To give a full recount of this trial and everyone that follows could take a long time, so I'll cut it down to what I deem are the 2 most important aspects this trial present us. First lies with our perp Gundam Tanaka. Gundam was a forerunner for my favorite character at this time, and I felt genuinely crushed that he turned out to be the Blackened in this case. But when I readied myself for the traditional Danganronpa end of trial crazy person manifesto fun time smile hour with guest host the Harlem Globetrotters, I was given something much more reserved. I know many others who got to this point and hit the same revelation I did that Gundam didn't kill Nekomaru out of any vice, but instead he fought him honorably to the death for the sake of the rest of the cast. And instead of going out kicking and screaming, he dies like a fucking G. This sets the tone for cases going forward, and even extends into the next title because it gives more weight to a murder other than "I'm evil, I'm gonna kill you," which up until this point had been criticized for being so needlessly juvenile and one-dimensional. Now a Danganronpa case can involve rational actors that you would never suspect because they simply fall victim to the logic of despair. Chapter 4 also sets in motion one of my favorite character arcs in the game, that is of our protagonist Hajime. Komaeda discovers over the course of this chapter that Hajime is nothing more than a talentless reserve student, someone not worth spitting at, much less thinking about. This revelation kind of destroys Hajime's confidence. He goes from feeling like he can overcome any goal by trying his best to feeling like he's just a worthless deadweight. Slowly but surely, the inner doubt and self-loathing begins to creep in and cause him to close himself off more and more. Just another way that logical despair slowly begins to eat away at a once rational character. The introduction of rational actors allows for suspicion of every character from now on. Honest thought, if I asked someone, hey, point out who killed Komaeda in the next case, and I showed them a picture of Kazuichi and Chiaki, I feel like 9 times out of 10 they would choose Kazuichi. Just because he looks and sometimes acts like a throwaway murderer character, as predefined by this series' standards. But no sir, Mr. Hypothetical person I just questioned in an airport, almost guaranteeing my status as a flight risk. The true killer is the gamer girl herself. Of course it is. I mean, God's most dangerous beast is that which grinds out Gormagala sets after all. On a more serious note, I need to explain this case a bit more in depth because I fucking adore it. When I was little, I had my introduction to the murder mystery genre with And Then There Were None, as I'm sure is the case for most people. One thing that stuck out to me from that title is at the very end, how every revelation collides in on itself only for the culprit to get away with the perfect murder. I see a lot of that ending in this case, but instead of getting away with the perfect crime, Komaeda uses his near godlike abilities to create the most unsolvable murder theoretically possible. To explain, allow me to walk you through the crime itself. After threatening to bomb the island in Minecraft, Komaeda sets up a scene which it appears that he has been tied down, tortured, mutilated, stabbed through the abdomen with a spear, and finally nearly burned alive. The initial breakthrough is that this cannot possibly be a murder, and that this is in fact an elaborate suicide machine created by Komaeda a la the aforementioned Christie novel. But upon closer inspection and deduction, it is found that Komaeda had stolen an incredibly heavy gaseous poison that lies low to the ground and hydrolyzes almost immediately. It's further discovered that he must have replaced the chemical contents of a fire grenade with the poison, so when the grenade explodes on the fire, the poison would hang around where Komaeda was lying and kill him, causing him to drop the spear from the pulley, making the murder look like a suicide. This obviously creates a problem for the group in that they all threw grenades, and there's no logical way to tell which one had the poison. So, in a stroke of absolute fucking genius, you the player are expected to slip into Komaeda's perspective and just bank on the fact that whoever had the poison must be the traitor working for the Future Foundation. So, whoever admits to being said traitor must ergo be the killer. And lo and behold, it do be that sassy game gal all the sweat lords at the Smash tournament get a bit too close to, and then they have to apologize for it on Twitter. This trial was an absolute whirlwind beginning to end, mostly because it trespasses on what I consider to be a sacred rule. In a sense, I was expecting 2 to follow the lead of 1 in that you had a Byakuya who acted as a snide roadblock that was actually there to challenge you to think outside the proverbial box, and there was a Kyoko, aka someone who serves to guide you in a more amicable way and lead you to the truth. Going into this game, it sets it up like Komaeda is your level-headed guide, and someone else, probably Fuyuhiko, would step up to be that asshole of the group. And oh, Komaeda just admitted to attempted murder and is currently having a theater kid meltdown, oh god, oh fuck. As the game proceeds, it holds Komaeda in this semi-antagonistic role as Chiaki steps up to be your guide, which is what makes this trial so fucking wild because we literally kill 2 birds with 1 stone by eliminating 2 up until that point plot crucial characters. So if we remove our forward momentum and our perpetual roadblock, the only thing we're left with is Hajime, and the last person Hajime wants to be left alone with is himself. Now, to talk about the final case in this game, it's going to be a little bit difficult, so to speak. Not because I find it to be complex, but just because at time of writing, I've been thinking about it a lot now that I'm 4 months removed from originally completing it. To continue with the story overview, I'm going to speedrun the twists, and since you definitely beat the game, I know you remember these, so I'm not going to go slow. Okay, so the whole death game was actually a VR simulation that was basically mind jail to rehabilitate you and your classmates after you were brainwashed by Junko into basically triggering the apocalypse. Oh, and Junko's back as a computer virus housed in a Nokia phone with too many rhinestones on it, and honestly, me too, girl. The trial progresses in a similar fashion as the first games, but another twist, boom bam, Naegi, Kyoko, and Byakuya come back to help you fuck around and make Junko find out, but also, whoa mama, Junko made it so that to free yourself from the VR game, you also have to inadvertently free her by uploading herself into the dead bodies of everyone killed up until this point. The main group is confronted with the impossible dilemma of either A, stay here and live out the rest of their non-existence, knowing the world will suffer without the Future Foundation because of their mistake, or B, unleash Junko into the world again, potentially risking a second tragedy. Or the beloved option C, which in this case is a forced shutdown that will erase all memory of the game, return the living characters to themselves as ultimate despairs, and basically be executed for high treason among several other death sentences. We in the business like to call that a bit much. Oh, and since Hajime surrendered himself to become the ultimate hope experiment and be supplanted with the personality of Izuru Kamakura, he basically won't exist anyway, honk honk. So the options are prolonged death, death of everyone else in the world, or I die and the world marches on without me. Obviously, this is a complete losing effort, and in the eyes of Hajime, the first two options are a complete no-go. But that third option, it's a fucking awful idea and completely out of the question. Erasing yourself from existing is just about the worst possible option out of the three. But that doesn't stop that little voice from scratching at the back of his brain. Of course it's the right choice. People like you weren't meant to get this far, let alone see the end of the ordeal. You caused this. It's not worth questioning, just do it. But that voice begins to argue with itself as this logic is followed. Well, of course you should exist. You have more of a right than those who fucked you over to be here. You didn't fail. You didn't do anything wrong. The world did you a disservice. Why should you even care what they need? Then the question starts swirling around his head more. Or why was I put in this situation? Why am I like this? Why wasn't I good enough? Why will I never be good enough? I've already moved on, but why do I still feel like I hate myself? Why can't I go back and fix it all? Why am I still here? Why am I still here? Why am I still here? Epilogue. Life is beautiful. The FGC is an infinitely expanding tapestry, much like life itself. Everything flows into a multitude of other stories to create an endlessly woven narrative, a crashing tide of heroes and villains, and at the end of the day, it's all just people having fun playing their games. I could have talked about a million other stories like 13 and 0, and just how gently you won't find your answer here. From time to time, I get in that headspace of being afraid of myself and wondering if I'm incorrect as a person. I wonder if the me that exists now is better off not. Sometimes I take what other people say to heart, even if it is in bad. Don't do this to yourself. As much as I tell myself it doesn't matter, it matters to me. But then I remember that it's because I'm human. We all are, and at one point, everyone felt that infinite horror that comes with simply being you. But what escape actually means is cutting yourself off from the world around you. You don't get to experience life anymore. You're too preoccupied with paradise to live. You have this dread in your stomach that sticks with you as you try to get away because you know that you're ignoring the issue at hand. I must take a step back into the real world and bid farewell. If only the answer could be found in some feel-good ending, then that would make writing about this a whole lot easier. I don't care about the story at the end of this game. I care about me and what this ending makes me feel, so allow me to speak not as a snarky internet persona, but as myself for a moment. Self-loathing is a very common thing, I feel, as though most of us will experience at some point in our lives. As far back as I can remember, I've always had that little voice in my head that says all the things I didn't want to hear about myself. Things from how I look to how I close myself off because I don't want to scare people away, which in turn makes me appear unavailable, to just thinking I'm disgusting for whatever reason. It's a pervasive and intrusive thought that actively makes my life worse. Some days I go along and feel a shining confidence about myself and allows me to do things I thought I'd be too scared to do. And then the next day I get hit with a brick with a note written on it asking why I was so stupid to think that, signed by me. I think back to when I was younger and always alone, and how I was a much sadder and crueler person, and I let that perception of me dominate who I am now. This is where I'm able to tie back into our main point. Everything I've said so far about both Hajime and myself is patently untrue. I'm cognizant of that fact. That doesn't mean that little voice of despair won't try to convince me otherwise. After all, like I said in Case 4, despair can infect a rational actor and cause them to fall victim to the logic of it, despite how illogical it may seem. As Hajime's inner reflection continues, he goes from blaming himself for his own misery to blaming the world around him. Life has that effect on people sometimes. I've seen it far too often. Somebody just gets screwed over at the wrong time and it sets the tone for the rest of their life. Or at least that's what they like to say. See, I was like this too. Not too long ago, actually. In fact, it was right when I beat this game. During the time I beat Danganronpa 2, I was in the midst of failing out of nursing school. This is something I'm incredibly passionate about, almost to a fault, and to watch 3 years of hard work fall apart in a matter of 2 months absolutely destroyed me. I levied any and all support and effort to do my best to pass, and I still came up short. In no uncertain terms, I fucking failed. I felt like I let myself, my friends, my family, anyone who's dumb enough to put any modicum of faith in me down. It's a horrifically disquieting feeling to have my world collapse in an instant right around me. The only thing I could possibly do is just go back to sleep, which led me to another situation, a ritual if you would. Every morning I'd have to wake up and be hit with the revelation of who I was, what was happening all over again. It didn't get any easier, I didn't get used to it, I just got the privilege of reliving that misery all over again. I did my best to drown out those thoughts any way I could. I preoccupied myself with work, I made as much of an effort as possible, I spent time with friends, but at the end of the day, the work would end, the friends would leave, and I'd be right back to where I started. Funny thing, whenever I'm done hanging out with my friends, and I used to get this awful pit in my stomach, one that reminds me of the same feeling I got when summer vacation was almost over, and I had to go back to school. It's an indescribable anxiety that arises from having to return to something unpleasant or tough. That's how I felt knowing I had to go back to sleep that night, and wake up in the morning being alone with myself. It's a want to escape my own body and mind because at the core, that's where my problems reside. But eventually life came and went, and once more, the thing that still remained was me. I didn't get my Cinderella story, but I'm also not completely out of it yet. See, I may have been a fucking failure, but I also didn't give up. It was at this time I kept replaying the ending of Danganronpa 2, and I kept thinking about what message it left with me. Not even just that, I think about the hope it left with me. My fate doesn't rely on a score on an exam. My self-worth isn't tied to what I do and don't achieve. I'm not any less deserving of my humanity because of my deeds. This is the heart of Danganronpa 2. People aren't born with more or less of a right to happiness than others. You are always going to have that opportunity to make your life your own, and there will always be people to help you take that chance no matter how uncertain your future may be. Which reminds me of something I'm so quick to forget. That you don't need skill or an excelling trait to be wanted. Sometimes people like you for who you are, no strings attached. It's still quite hard for me to accept that fact, because I still need to get used to liking myself more. It's so easy to end up like Hajime at the tail end of this game, a wrapped mix of wanting a hopeful future but accepting your life as nothing but despair, a combination of polar opposites that combine to create pure nihil. Nothingness is desirable because any pursuit of hope would only lead to pain, but succumbing to despair is admitting your own pointlessness. As they say, it's better to feel nothing than to be hurt again. But I'll be damned if I ever desire nothing from my life again. The strive to go on and achieve more, whether it be success, fame, or simply happiness. A desire is what drives me. When given an impossible choice, Hajime didn't choose from 3 short straws. He desired a new future and made it despite the fact that there was a chance it wouldn't work out for him. He awoke with a newfound confidence that I feel myself, because in a world where everyone you love believes in you, that voice of doubt is the only critic you have left to silence, and the only way to do that is to prove everything it says about you wrong. Ever since I've resolved myself to build my perfect future, I've been going to bed and waking up feeling a little bit better. Not completely better, but definitely better than I was. The world didn't change, life didn't change, but I did, because I wanted to see myself happy. I wanted to do all the things happy people do. And it's kind of funny because I started feeling this way, and then that anxiety about being alone with myself slowly went away. No longer do I feel like my vacation is at its conclusion. So long as I keep going like this, I think my summer will see no end. It's these little moments at the end of my videos where I get to reflect on what I had just written and laugh at myself for being such a cornball, but I also get to give a little thanks to you, and thanks to a game that means so much to me. It's a lot, and getting as far as I did means that I have a lot further to go. So hopefully you'll be willing to join me. After all, my vacation has only just begun. Who's to say you can't start yours too? My name is Michael. Let's talk again soon. Hi, that was heavy. Wow. That's not fun, but what is fun is I hit 1,000 subs, so thank you. Please, like I said, support the channel any way you can. If you enjoy the videos, like, comment, subscribe, do all the things, share it with your friends, tell them that this kid's a fucking sad sack. That's gonna be a theme going forward. But yeah, thank you so much, and hope you enjoyed it.